Okay, coming up on this edition of the Penn State Blitz here on Penn Live, Penn State's inching closer to an unbeaten season, but they got to tackle Michigan State in East Lansing. It has not been easy the last couple of years. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite young Nittany Lion, Noah Cain, and why I only had 5 carries last week. James Franklin had something to say about that. We're also going to look at Penn State's offense, whether or not they're getting enough explosive plays and how they can fix that. And as always, we're going to get to the Penn State Mailbag. Greg Pickle, how are you?
Welcome back to another week, the final week of October, and I don't think we both... Are you going to wish me a happy Halloween? Happy Halloween to you. I don't think we both had Penn State to be unbeaten at this point. I know I didn't, but no matter, here we are.
I did have them beating Michigan. Someone did not, but I did.
That's right.
At the start of the year. What is Lola, your golden retriever, going to wear for Halloween trick-or-treating?
What's a good question?
Can you tell me and also everyone
It'll
else?
probably depend what Amazon decides to ship out by the time we get around to ordering it. Maybe the baby shark phenomena will continue. We'll see if the Nationals keep winning.
All right. Please document this.
Yes.
Okay, so Penn State 7-0 after beating Michigan by 7. A little bit closer there at the end than people thought it would be, considering they started out 21-0 on the Wolverines in the whiteout game. Now, their third pretty tough test in a row. They got to go to Michigan State. Michigan State's kind of struggling, 4-3, but they're coming off a bye. They know how to play Penn State. D'Antonio has a very good record against Franklin, has only lost once. So when you look at this matchup and the fact that they have to travel again, how do you see this one playing out? And should Penn State fans be a little nervous about this game? They're a 6.5-point favorite, but they have lost the last 2 games in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I don't think you ever want to be in a situation where you're going to play a team on the road at the back end of a really difficult stretch, and suddenly you'd almost would rather that team be in a good place than the wilted underdog that everybody thinks is going to roll over and play dead because they have 6 players in the transfer portal at least, if not more. They just got railroaded by Wisconsin, 38-0 or whatever it ended up being. It was ugly. They had a bye week now to fix a lot of things and to figure out what Penn State does at a greater clip than what they would have during a normal week. So I don't think it lines up perfectly for Penn State, but I can't get over the talent advantage. I think in years past, you looked at this Michigan State roster and you would say, okay, this guy, and this guy can wreck the game. Mm-hmm. I don't identify as many of those guys this time around. The question really, Bob, is will they be able to stop Brian Lewerke? He's been just slippery enough each of the past 2 years to lead comebacks. And then will they be able to go on the road and find a way to get the offense going from start to finish?
I think slippery is a great word to describe Brian Lewerke, especially since 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Speaking of slippery, do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
The great weather delay game, over 3 hours. I think it was supposed to kick off at noon. Mm-hmm. We were stuck in the Michigan State press box with an irate David Jones over this weather delay. He did not see any reason for it. Mm-hmm. He did not like it one bit. I think by the time they restarted the game, it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
Penn State started out fast, but it looked like the weather delay might have affected them. They lost the game late, 27-24. In the fourth quarter, I think Lewerke threw for exactly 400 yards in that game. Mm-hmm. One of his best games as a Spartan. And he did it to him again last year. He threw a touchdown pass, I believe, to Felton Davis III with 25 seconds to go. Mm-hmm. And that was really a difficult loss. Penn State had lost to Ohio State the week before. I don't think they ever recovered from that loss for the rest of the season. The Spartans this year, though, you talk about the talent advantage Penn State has. They still have a pretty good front seven.
Yep.
And that is something that, Penn State was able to run the ball on them last year because Miles Sanders had one long run. He finished with 162 yards. But when you're facing a rugged front seven, it would figure that you might want maybe your most physical running back on the field maybe for more than a couple of series. So Noah Cain, after only
Is that a move in the second down, Bob?
After only 5 carries for 19 yards. I'm just subtle. I'm subtle. You ruined it for me. 5 carries, 19 yards. It surprised a lot of people. No carries in the first half. James Franklin was asked about the Noah Cain question a different way at his Tuesday news conference. And in essence, it is what are we missing? Is there something going on, maybe away from the field?
Right.
Is it more than the on-field performance? And he just said there's 1,000 things that go into, setting the running back rotation and playing time. You guys see 20 minutes of practice all week. We're on the field with these guys, 8-10 hours a day, whatever the NCAA allows. And he said it just sounds to me like he circled back and they want to play all 4 guys, but Greg, they have to find a way to get him more involved in the offense on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question becomes, what are those things in practice or in the meeting room that are keeping him from getting a more...
Or in the classroom.
Or in the classroom, whatever. What's holding him back? That's the thing we'll never have an answer to, but clearly they think something is. So, he said after the game Saturday that they moved him up to the second running back, which is true. But he still didn't see much more time on the field. Now, I guess the question you can ask yourself is that because Penn State's offense stalled so much that they didn't have as many drives as they thought they would? Or was it a conscious decision to make sure they got these other guys in there before Noah Cain? That's the one thing we don't know and we won't get to hear about from Ricky Ronnie. But it comes down to, at some point, you have to put your best players on the field. They've done it, to their credit, outside of the Pittsburgh game. They've done it when it's the chips are on the table and it's time to win the game. They've put Noah Cain on the field. They got KJ Hamler the ball to close out Michigan. So credit to Ricky Ronnie and his staff for that. But at some point, you're going to need it earlier than the closeout drive, which is something Penn State hasn't done. Mark D'Antonio had a really interesting comment where he said earlier in his news conference Tuesday, he had mentioned that they had been able to close out Penn State. And then he said the thing that interested him most about Penn State this year is that they've been able to close out teams, and that's something he hasn't obviously seen from them consistently before. So, using Noah Cain in that role is great, but just feels like there's more ways to use him, and we'll see if this is the week they finally do that.
2 points on Noah Cain before we move to third down. I think it's a chicken versus the egg argument. You said their drives were stalling out, so they didn't get him in the game. Were the drives stalling out because they didn't give him the ball?
Right.
I think that's another way of looking at that. And also, I really think, and I don't think he can really afford to speak about it. But this to me is about the transfer portal. I think it really is. I think they do like all 4 running backs, and I think maybe the separation between Noah and Devin Ford, Journey Brown, and Ricky Slade, who had a nice run against Michigan, it's probably not that much, and they're all different runners. But I think if they do say, we found our starting running back, there's going to be some unhappy campers in that running back room. I think they are mindful of that.
There's going to be unhappy campers either way, though. You got 2 more 4-stars coming in next year.
I know, but I think that once you commit to Noah, then everything accelerates, and I just don't think he's ready to do that. Yeah. I think he's trying to manage this a little bit. I don't know that he can really talk about it because he doesn't really want to. I don't think he would want to admit that. I just think the transfer portal is a bigger factor maybe than many people realize.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see if Noah Cain, if it's in the fourth quarter and the game's tied at 20, who's going to be the back they put in the game. They did it. They committed to him against Iowa. They committed to him in the third quarter against Pittsburgh. And he looked awfully good against Purdue. They had the game won. But the offense just looks different, I think, with him running the ball. I'm real curious to see what they do with him against Michigan State.
I'm curious to see if we can ever move past this or if it's going to be a topic of conversation all season long. I don't think it's going away until they either beat somebody so convincingly that it doesn't matter, or they find a way to get him on the field more and he becomes more of a game wrecker than, when he's had like he's done when he's had the opportunities to do so.
It is one of the greater mysteries of the James Franklin regime. This kid's only been on campus for 10 months, 7 games, but he's just a very fascinating figure. He does so many good things. He can catch the ball too. He can block, pass protect as well. And believe me, I know that you know this. The fans are very, very curious about that. Yep. There's very rarely a day go by that we don't hear about it from a lot of different Penn State fans. They just want to know an answer. I don't know that we're going to get one. But let's move to third down.
Not yet, because let's speak about things we have to hear from the fans, Bob. Don't forget to like, rate, or subscribe.
I was just rolling there, Craig.
The Penn Live. I know we were going to get there. The Penn Live Penn State Blitz podcast. You can get it wherever you get your audio: Stitcher, Apple, Google, Acast, in an embedded post. And you can find, once you're done listening to this podcast, a Penn State update with our buddy Dustin Hawkins-Smith. It's posted every morning. Gives you a headline, the top headlines of the day. So be sure to check out that. Like, rate, and subscribe. And then if you're preferring the videos, Bob, PennLive.com/allPennState or YouTube.com/allPennState to find our latest videos, whether it's in the rain on a rainy Tuesday in State College, or if it's you and Dave Jones and we're getting shooed off the field like we did 2 years ago at Spartan Stadium.
Oh, that's right.
Those videos will be there.
Dave handled that well, too.
Yeah.
Whenever I think of Dustin, and the Penn State podcast obviously is a great new addition to what we're doing. The only two words that pop into my head when I think of Dustin Hawkinsmith: professional eater.
Yes.
I mean, I think he's got a career in that field if he ever wants to go down that road.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it. I've seen it when he was on the Penn State beat a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He is a fantastic eater when he has a little time on his hands, and he's doing some good things for Penn Live in the eating department as well.
That's right.
But let's turn it back to Penn State. Their offense against Iowa generated just one explosive play, the 22-yard touchdown pass from Clifford to Hamler, and it was just enough. They got more big plays against Michigan. Franklin talked about they felt that if they were going to beat Michigan, that was the way to do it. It was going to be tough to just line up and try and keep the ball for 6 or 7 minutes. I don't know that Penn State's really constructed that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they seem to be able to do it when Noah Cain's on the field. But he was talking about how to generate more chunk plays, and he had an interesting take on maybe going from 4 to 6 to 8 to maybe 10 to 12 a game.
Right.
And it actually, Greg, starts with maybe being more efficient in the short passing game.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen Sean Clifford at times maybe not make all of his reads or the right reads, and that's not just in the passing game. I think it's in the running game, too. I think there's times he has kept it when there's an opportunity there to read the defensive lineman and hand off and let somebody else get a big gain. Sometimes he just keeps it. I think he rushes through things a little bit at times, but yeah, being more efficient in those areas and in the short passing game. How many times have we heard James Franklin and Ricky Ronnie say, well, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, yada, 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 because we're going to take what the defense gives us. That's fine, as long as you take what the defense gives you. And I think there's been chances to hit teams underneath. There's definitely going to be chances to hit Michigan State underneath and let KJ Hamler run, kind of like that play at Maryland or Jahan Dotson, the play that KJ...
Or his play at Iowa. That was a flat pass that essentially he took the distance.
Those should be the opportunities to beat Michigan State's front seven, and they'll be aggressive too, no doubt. So I think if you're more consistent on those and you don't miss wide open Pat Freiermuth on 3rd and 8, there's things you can point to every game that says this offense isn't far away. The stats back that up. At some point, though, you're going to run into a non-anemic offense, and it may not be until they play Minnesota. It may not be until they play Ohio State. But at some point, you're going to find an offense that is able to score points and that your defense is not going to be able to put in its own scoring droughts, and you're not going to be able to score 21 or 28 points out of the chute and then sit around and sit on that lead for, basically 3 quarters.
Yeah, and having said all that, I think we probably have to say, like, Sean Clifford is having a tremendous year.
Oh, no question.
It's not really. I don't think you or I are saying that he needs to play better. We just think that there's some more efficiency that he can have.
Right.
He's completing, I think, 63% of his passes. Only turned the ball over twice in 7 games. He's impacting the game with his legs. He did it against Iowa. He did it against Michigan when they needed them to do that. He is playing at a very high level for a first-year starter.
Yeah.
And really, when you think about it, it's hard to believe that going into spring practice, we weren't even really talking about him as Penn State's quarterback. It was all Tommy Stevens, and then everything kind of fell into place, and Tommy decided to go to Mississippi State. But he's really literally taken the ball and run with it for Penn State. But I think what James is talking about, and it's also drop passes. But yeah, there are opportunities for them to be even better, and I think he knows they're going to need to be like that with a game at Michigan State and also a game at Ohio State later this year. But it's interesting to note that he thinks the short passing game will set up, the running game and also bigger plays, catch and runs that will become explosive plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway to me is that Sean Clifford's playing so well that you're able to nitpick these little things because all the other things are taking care of themselves. The putting up enough points to win, they're top 10 in the country in that department. Average scoring margin, they're top 10 in the country.
Right.
I believe he might have the most total yards from scrimmage of any quarterback in the Big Ten. He's at least in the top 2 with Justin Fields. So, I mean, yeah, certainly it feels like nitpicking to critique him. At the same time, again, you're going to get into some games where you need some points and you can't go 17, 18, 19, 20 minutes without scoring. That's the next step for this offense. But it's already taken probably a bigger step than most would have assumed. Go back all the way to April when we were talking about what this offense could look like. I think it's probably much further ahead of what even the most optimistic Penn State fans could have hoped for. In the second year of Ricky Ronnie, the first year of Sean Clifford, basically a brand new running back pitcher. And they're doing all this without really getting Justin Shorter or a third wide receiver involved. So it's been impressive.
Yes. All right, that's three. I think we're 3 downs in.
Yeah.
That means 4th down is upon us.
Yes.
Penn State's offense is pretty good on 4th down this year, I think.
We're just okay.
Let's just talk about our 4th down percentage with the Penn State mailbag. So let's go.
All right, first one, Bob. Micah Parsons, James Franklin's talked about him on Tuesday during his weekly news conference, brought up the fact that his ceiling is very high, but he thinks that he's nowhere close to it. What have you seen differently from Micah this year compared to last? And is it true, in your opinion, that he's nowhere close to reaching the heights of what his career could be?
Well, let's tackle, because we're talking about Micah. Let's tackle the nowhere near his ceiling. I think James Franklin is a pretty sharp guy, and I think when he says stuff like this, he knows that Micah is looking at maybe being 3 and out at Penn State. So when you say he can get better, and he's nowhere near his ceiling, he's kind of saying that, man, if he imagine what he can do if he stayed 4 years at Penn State.
Sure.
I think that's part of it. But what I've noticed about Micah, he is definitely playing faster. Not that he wasn't playing fast last year. He was playing fast, especially at the end of last year. He is hitting people harder, if that's possible. He put a shot on Patterson on the second play of the game. I'm surprised Patterson got up. He is delivering some impactful blows. I think where he can get better, and I think it'll just happen naturally, is you're going to see him produce more game-changing plays. It's not that he hasn't been in position to do it. And the reason I think that is, as his career has gone on, Greg, they're using him more off the edge. If you remember early in the season and last year, a lot of the times it looked like he was almost like a stack backer, aligned inside as an outside linebacker. Against Michigan, he was walking up and almost playing stand-up defensive end, and they're sending him a lot more on blitzes. I think that's where as a disruptive player, I think that's Micah's next step. He's got 6 tackles for loss already. He's been close on a lot of other plays. He is this close to really becoming a game wrecker and a game changer, I think, as a blitzer and as a pass rusher. And I think that's kind of a little bit what James Franklin's alluding to.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Moving on to the second mailbag question in our segment here. So James Franklin took the high road when asked about the officiating at Iowa.
He did.
Jim Harbaugh kind of did the opposite. He complained about it after the game.
Interesting. Was that the comment?
Interesting to compare those calls, yeah. And then on Tuesday, Nico Collins complained about the offensive pass interference that was called against him when Marquise Wilson was defending him. So what would you rather, Bob? Would you rather someone take the a coach or someone we're interviewing take the James Franklin approach and not really discuss the officiating, kind of just let it go? Or would you rather hear from them their perspective on how those calls may have changed the game?
I think in today's day and age, Greg, with all the TV replays and all the commentating and all the social media, I think officials' mistakes speak for themselves. I think when they're glaringly, and with replay, I mean, they couldn't even get the Iowa game. They even had the advantage of replay and still got it wrong.
Yeah.
I think James is probably pretty smart. When it looks like you're taking the higher road, avoiding fines. I think that is the right approach. I just think that Jim Harbaugh gets so mad sometimes he just can't. He's a little bit more old school, I think, than James Franklin is, and I think that Jim was mad from a play early in the game when John Reed broke up a pass on 3rd down. I thought he got there early. They didn't call a flag, and I saw him freak out. Didn't play the rest of that game. Didn't play against Purdue. I still think that now that he's officially they played 13 games last year, 20 games into his career. I thought 20 games into his career, we'd be talking about him as one of the better receivers in the Big Ten. That might not be fair to say to him. I think he's got all the tools in the world, but it's just the progress has been very slow for him. He has dealt with separate medical issues. One was a knee injury last year. Obviously, the helmet and the concussion, I'm guessing it was a concussion this year, has hampered him. As far as John Reed, the funny thing about his penalties and also the touchdown he gave up at Iowa is I think a couple of the penalties have been very questionable. Thought one against Pittsburgh might have been questionable, one against Iowa. And he was in great position, Greg, I think, to defend that touchdown in the Iowa game. And he just didn't kind of play aggressive. He let that receiver go over him and catch the ball. He just can't do that. I think he's really close to being a very good corner. And I wouldn't give him too much grief over the penalties because I don't know that all of them were penalties.
Yeah, 2 quick thoughts on that. It could have maybe been pass interference on the offense in that Iowa score. I mean, I did ticky-tacky, but so was the calls on him earlier. So, secondly, Brent Pryde, James Franklin, both would rather take a penalty if they have to, and maybe a guy gets an interception or he knocks a play, forces a fourth down like you just mentioned on the Harbaugh thing. So I think they just live with those. All right, time for picks and predictions after the break, Bob.